Yo guys, Toyhouze here with another video. In this one, I'm going to be covering the best race for each class on the Horde. With new races introduced in the Burning Crusade and lots of racial abilities changed, it's a lot to keep track of, especially for Horde players. It's one of the most important decisions you make actually when creating a character, because once you've chosen, you're locked in unless you want to reroll. So this guide is going to cover the best race choice for each class in both PvE and PvP. Racials are hugely impactful in the Burning Crusade, so hopefully this guide helps you make the right choice when you're deciding what race to roll. So let's get into the best race for each class in World of Warcraft, the Burning Crusade. So first we're going to start off by talking about each race's racial abilities and changes that happened since Classic Vanilla WoW. And up first is the Orc. One of the best races for PvP, Orcs were actually hit with some of the most nerfs, in my opinion. Axe specialization now gives 5 expertise instead of 5 weapon skill, and if you're familiar with weapon skill, plus 5 weapon skill is 3% hit and gives glancing blow penalty reduction up to 308, in addition to reduction in dodge and parry as well. Expertise, on the other hand, decreases the chance that melee or ranged attacks made by the player will be dodged or parried, so this is a nerf, unfortunately. Next is Blood Fury, a powerful activated ability that was actually buffed. It now also increases damage and healing, as well as ranged attack power depending on your class, so that's going to actually help out quite a bit in PvE, but also quite a bit in PvP as well. Another buff is that the reduced healing debuff was reduced from 25 seconds to 15 seconds, so that debuff is going to last just as long as the buff. Hardiness is an amazing PvP talent that was nerfed, which makes me super sad. 25% stun resist was just too good. In the Burning Crusade, it has been reduced to 15%, but it is still an amazing PvP racial. And last but not least, Command has stayed the same, giving a 5% bonus to Hunter and Warlock pet damage. Okay, next up we're going to talk about Undead. And I think this is very special. Undead is going to be a particularly powerful race in the Burning Crusade because a lot of people know that Warlocks are very good in the Burning Crusade, so especially for PvP, Undead is going to be a very strong race because of how prevalent Warlocks are going to be and how many fears they're basically going to be in the game. So Will of the Forsaken has remained the same. In fact, all of the racials for Undead have remained the same. But Will of the Forsaken is an extremely powerful racial that is even now more powerful as the ratio of Warlocks has increased without a doubt in the Burning Crusade. So Undead have some nice racials. We're going to move on to Tauren, another race that did not have any changes. War Stomp is fantastic. Do keep in mind it does have a 0.5 second cast, so it might not be as great as you think for tanking if you're getting hit by many mobs. It only stuns up to 5 enemies. It's not an infinite amount of enemy stun. And the Endurance is a nice talent as well as Nature Resistance. Now for the Troll, we have some changes similar to the Orc Axe specialization, with the Troll's bow and throwing specializations. So before, the skill increase, which again is 3% hit and gives glancing blow penalty reduction up to 308, in addition to reducing dodge and parry. But expertise, actually this doesn't even boost expertise. It actually only increases your chance to critically hit with throwing weapons and bows respectively. So this is even a harder nerf. And to be quite honest, this makes a lot of sense. Troll is an absolute PvE powerhouse race. If you look at the races that Troll can be, Troll is the best in class race for almost all of them for PvE. Troll has always been the go-to. So this nerf, I think, makes a lot of sense. It kind of evens the playing ground a little bit. Berserking is an incredible Troll racial, and we'll talk about this, and I'll show you some examples as we go through. Beast slaying is incredibly powerful. There are lots of beasts in raids, both in Vanilla Classic and as well in the Burning Crusade with the Troll raid of the Amani Warbear. I forget the name; it's slipping me. But so those two nerfs happened. Regeneration and beast slaying are both really good. Beast slaying more so. The numbers on regeneration is actually pretty low. It's not that meaningful of a talent from what I've read. All right, Blood Elf. So the Blood Elf race is new and introduced in the Burning Crusade, and it has some pretty strong racials. Arcane Torrent is an AoE silence for 2 seconds, and you gain mana, energy, depending on if you're playing Rogue or if you're playing a caster that has mana. And then Mana Tap is also a nice ability that drains some mana. Doesn't actually give it to you, it just reduces the target's mana. It stacks up to 3 times, and that will make Arcane Torrent a little bit stronger. What's cool about Blood Elves is that they have Arcane Affinity, so if you are on a fresh realm, which would only really be private servers at this point, or depending on how Blizzard does TBC Classic, you may have an advantage on getting a wand quicker, because Blood Elves can be Warlocks, Priests, Mages, all those casters who need those wands. And then magic resistance is nice. All schools of magic increased by 5. Okay, so now that we talked about each of the race's racials for the Horde, we're going to walk through each class and compare how these racials stack up in terms of PvE and PvP to help you decide which one is best for whatever it is you want to specialize in the Burning Crusade. So we're going to start with the Warrior. And the races that can be a warrior are Orc, Undead, Tauren, Troll, and that is it. Blood Elves cannot be warriors, and I always thought that was kind of funny that Blood Elves couldn't be warriors, because pretty much every single race can be a warrior besides Blood Elves. Alright, so we're going to start off with PvE DPS. So let's start off with Orc, and as you can see, in my opinion, I think Orc is the strongest PvE DPS race. They have Axe Specialization, they have Blood Fury. These two together make them very strong compared to, let's say, Undead, that only has Shadow Resistance as some damage mitigation, not that big of a racial bonus. Tauren only have Endurance and Nature Resistance. Again, these are damage mitigation racials that are not going to help you with your DPS. The only other class that I think comes close would be Troll. They have Beast Slaying, that's going to be 5% damage against beasts, which will be nice to utilize at whenever that occasion arises. Berserking is always strong. It'll give you at least a 10% increased attack speed, up to 30. And regeneration is kind of nice as well, a little bit to help with staying alive. But overall, I would say Axe Specialization is going to always be there if you're using axes. Blood Fury, you can be popping all the time. And for Troll, they'll have Berserking to pop all the time as well. And Beast Slaying will only be used occasionally. So that's why I thought it was kind of a close call here. I think both are very strong. However, I think Orc slightly wins. Alright, now we're going to talk about PvP DPS. Now, I think that Orc is definitely the strongest here. I think Hardiness is still super strong. 15% stun resist is a huge deal, especially against rogues, other warriors, and especially in TBC. Mace Specialization Warriors is a thing in PvP, especially in some of the later patches when Maelstrom and some epic weapons become available. So Undead is also really strong, I felt, because again, like I mentioned, there's going to be a high population of Warlocks. So I think that Will of the Forsaken is stronger than people think in the Burning Crusade, although Warriors do already have Berserker Rage, which makes them immune to fear. However, so you already kind of have fear resistance as a warrior. Now for Tauren, they have War Stomp, which I think is very strong. I think it's underrated how strong it is. Having that stun interrupt is always strong in PvP. Endurance is a nice bonus as well. And then I actually think that Troll is the weakest when it comes to PvP. Beast Slaying is essentially useless. You might be targeting a pet maybe as a warrior in Arena. Regeneration, again, is pretty weak. The other two racials aren't that great. Really, Berserking is the only thing that Trolls have going for them in PvP. And compared to some of the other racials, I just don't think it's that strong. Alright, when it comes to tanking, however, I would say Trolls are actually one of the best tanks. They have Beast Slaying, again, for those special encounters. Berserking is going to always provide more value than probably any DPS, because you're the tank and you're going to be taking damage. regeneration is more helpful because you're not just going to be at max health, you're going to be constantly be taking damage. And berserking really gets its value from the increased threat generation. Some fights in the Burning Crusade, are threat fights where you really struggle to generate threat, and that's when trolls are really going to shine, when they can show off that increased threat generation through berserking. In second place, I chose orcs because axe specialization, hardiness can help in scenarios where you might get stunned, whether that's in a dungeon or raid. So I think those two racials are pretty good. Axe specialization, again, not that good, but it helps with threat generation, reducing the chance that you'll get, you'll miss or dodged an attack or parry. Again, you don't want that actually, because if a boss parries your attack, their next attack is going to come sooner. Undead doesn't really have anything in terms of mitigation. Will of the Forsaken is kind of niche, and shadow resistance is only 10 shadow resist, so it's not that great. Tauren is, I would say, in third place behind Orc. Endurance is nice, stamina is helpful, and nature resistance is there to help a little bit. All right, so that's warrior. Let's move on to rogue. So every class or every race can be rogue besides Tauren, and we're going to go into PvE DPS. So I would rank Orc as number 1 for PvE DPS because of axe specialization and blood fury. I think that Troll is, again, close second. Orc and Troll are both very good. In PvE, Beast Slaying is fantastic. Berserking, you've heard it before. Blood Elf is a new class that we're talking about, or a new race that we're talking about here. Some of the racials that Blood Elves bring to the table aren't super helpful in PvE. The Arcane Torrent can be helpful because it's going to give you energy, so it can help you maybe get off an extra attack or help you go through your rotation a little bit easier, but I don't think it's that meaningful. I think 5% damage to beasts is a little more powerful, and especially berserking. However, I did not put Blood Elf in last. I thought Undead came in last for PvE because they really just don't have anything that boosts damage. Okay, let's move on to PvP. So besides the fact that, Undead Rogues look amazing in some of the gear in the Burning Crusade, Will of the Forsaken is by far one of the best PvP talents, again, especially since there's going to be so many Warlocks in the Burning Crusade. Undead Warlock, I feel like, is just the go-to number 1 choice for PvP as a rogue. However, I do think that orcs are a close second because hardiness, that 15% stun resist, is really strong. However, the reason they came in second, I think, is because Will of the Forsaken is a guaranteed, essentially trinket out of fears, whereas hardiness is kind of a chance. You might still get stunned quite a bit, although the times you don't get stunned, it's really going to be powerful. And that axe specialization will help if you are using axes as a rogue, and of course Blood Fury is very strong. Up next, in third, I actually placed Blood Elf above Troll because I think that Arcane Torrent on a rogue is actually very strong. If you open with a cheap shot and go into a kidney and then use Arcane Torrent, you can really CC someone for a very long time and get a kill off pretty quick. So I don't want to understate how powerful Blood Elves can be as rogues, especially with Arcane Torrent. Troll coming in last, although not necessarily weak at all. Having Berserking is a strong racial for sure. So, but it just doesn't match up, in my opinion, with some of the other racials available. All right, so that's Rogue, and we're going to move on to Mage now. So the Mage is accessible to Undead, Trolls, and Blood Elves. So for PvE DPS, in first place, I decided that the Troll was probably the best DPS. 10% increased casting speed on a Mage, I think, is just way more powerful than anything that the Undead or Blood Elf racials can provide. That 5% damage to beasts is also useful. I think it's Zulaman. Sorry, I totally forgot. So Zulaman is a raid in the Burning Crusade, there's a lot of beasts in that raid, as well as just you know, as you're leveling or things like that, PvE, right? So undead don't really have any bonuses to damage, and neither do blood elves. So the only redeeming characteristic of blood elves, in my opinion, is that they have Arcane Torrent to help a little bit with getting some mana back to DPS longer. So I place them in second place behind Troll. But I think when it comes to PvE for mages, Trolls are an easy winner. However, when it comes to PvP, I think that there's no other replacement for Undead, once again. Undead are just dominating in PvP in the Burning Crusade. Will of the Forsaken is just super strong. Shadow Resistance is going to help quite a bit because of all the Warlocks there'll be. I guess I shouldn't say quite a bit. It's only 10, but it helps. Behind them is Troll. I think Troll actually is second place for PvP. And it's kind of a close call because Arcane Torrent is good, Mana Tap is helpful, but I think Berserking, again, is a really strong racial. 10% increased cast speed is really strong, and it could be up to 30 depending on when you pop it. So I think that Trolls come in second, and then last, Blood Elves in third. But I think it's a pretty close race for PvP, but I do think Undead are clear winners. All right, we're moving on to the Warlock, the class that we're probably going to see the most of in the Burning Crusade, and that can be played by Orcs, Undead, and Blood Elves for the Horde. So, which is the best PvE DPS for Warlocks? So I actually chose Orc for a couple of reasons. I think that Orc has Blood Fury, which is going to help give extra damage to spells, as well as Command. Now, sometimes Warlocks will use Demonic Sacrifice to sacrifice their pet, so Command won't be useful. It'll just give them that extra shadow damage. However, I think that, you know, that won't happen till later around tier 5, when Warlocks have enough hit and crit on their gear to make going Destro viable. So I think that Orc is going to be stronger because of Blood Fury and Command compared to the other races. And actually, if you look at Undead, once again, their racials have really no aggressive bonus to damage. They're all really defensive racials. And when it comes to Blood Elves in PvE, Arcane Tap and Arcane Torrent are really only going to help very nominally with sustain, very, very little. It's not going to really move the needle. So I would say even Undead are a little bit better than Blood Elves, because maybe in those off scenarios where you get feared during a fight, you can pop out of that fear and get back into the action, whereas you might get a small amount of mana back from Arcane Torrent as a Warlock. Alright, when it comes to PvP, I just could not choose a number one. I think the Undead and Orc kind of tie. I thought about it. Maybe Undead wins simply because how popular Warlocks are going to be in TBC, but I just think Hardiness is such a great racial talent. Command in PvP, you're going to have a pet, so 5% increased damage. And remember, Felguard is now a demon that Warlocks can summon now, so Felguard is quite strong, and Blood Fury as well is quite strong. However, in PvP, against skilled opponents, they will try to burst you down during Blood Fury. You're getting 25% reduced healing, so you are a bit vulnerable during that, so take that into consideration. And really, we're comparing all three of those racials, Hardiness, Blood Fury, and Command, all against the strength of Will of the Forsaken, and maybe a little bit of Shadow Resistance. And I just think that they're about equal. I do respect the power of Will of the Forsaken, but I also think that Orc Racials are super strong in PvP. And then in a second place, I decided that Blood Elves were probably just not as good. They have some that magic resistance. They have the Mana Tap and Arcane Torrent. But the problem with Arcane Torrent on ranged spellcasters in PvP is that you really are sacrificing a lot of positioning in order to do this, in order to get off a silence on, let's say, a healer or a enemy DPS. So I would say Arcane Torrent is just much better on melee DPSers. All right, moving on to the hunter. So just like the warrior, it's available to 4 different races. The orc, the tauren, the troll, and the blood elf can all be hunters. And I would say that the number 1 hunter for PvE DPS, just like in classic vanilla WoW, is the troll. If you look at all these racials, they've got beast slaying, berserking, bow specialization, which is not as good. I recognize. However, I just think that you add those together, it's better than just blood fury and command for the orc. In third place, I thought blood elves came in. They don't really have much racials to help with PvE DPS as a hunter, just that arcane torrent for mana. And then in last place, we have the cow, the Tauren. He's going to just mosey on around. He doesn't really have anything. War Stomp is good, but it's not really going to help much in PvE as a DPSer. And Endurance is just stamina, so it doesn't really have anything. I would definitely say it's between Orc or Troll if you had to decide. And I think that Troll is just slightly better. It's a hard call to make. However, in PvP, I think the clear winner is the orc. The orc has axe specialization if you're holding axes and people are on you in melee range, which people are going to try to do, so it's helpful. Hardiness is there, that 15% stun resist, it's so strong. You've got Blood Fury, which is going to increase ranged attack power now in the Burning Crusade, and then you've got Command. All this together, I think, makes Orc the number 1 choice for PvP if you're playing a hunter. In second place, I would say it is a tie, actually. I don't think we should underestimate War Stomp. I think War Stomp is actually really great for a hunter, particularly because everyone's going to basically run to you and try to make you melee, and you can stun, and that's going to help you get away and make some distance between the two of you. However, I would say that Troll Berserking is a little bit better than that War Stomp. You can pop it, get a ton of abilities off with that 10% increased attack speed. And then I would say tied with the Tauren is the Blood Elf. Both the two abilities are kind of similar in my opinion. Maybe War Stomp's a little bit better because it's a stun, not just a silence, but it does take half a second to cast, maybe longer depending if it gets pushed back. So I'd say they're about equal in third place, but by far, if you're going to play a hunter for PvP, I'd choose an orc. All right, moving on to the Shaman. We've got Orc, Tauren, and Trolls that can potentially be Shamans for the Horde. So for PvE, and this is for all specializations, we have basically a tie again. Trolls have been the best for PvE typically in most cases. However, axe specialization, Blood Fury, those are both super strong compared to just berserking really, and beast slaying to some amount. Tauren I feel like just fall behind, so I say it's a tie, honestly. I can't say that, I think it's just situational. Blood Fury and axe specialization, you might not be using axes, you might not be fighting beasts, but maybe you will be. So I think it's kind of situational, and I think it's kind of a tie when it comes to the best shaman race. Like, you might be an elemental shaman, so maybe you're going to want to be a troll because axe specialization isn't going to do anything for you. So that's for PvE DPS, orc or troll. And then when it comes to a PvE healer, I would say that the number 1 choice is troll. Axe specialization is not going to help you at all as a resto shaman. Hardiness in PvE really not going to do anything. Blood Fury a little bit, but if you're using like chain heals or things like that and you want to be included, it's going to just decrease your healing. For that reason, I think that berserking is just too good. Just berserk and chain heal, and you're going to be doing a ton of healing. For PvP, I just think hardiness is too good. So I think Orc is number 1. But I really think that, close seconds are Troll and Druid. Again, 10% to 30% cast speed. I can't stress how strong that is. Berserking. And then War Stomp, I just think can't be underestimated in PvP as an AoE stun. All right, for PvP healer, pretty much the same deal. I think uh, maybe maybe Taurens are slightly worse as a healer because Warstomp might not be used as frequently. Like, for example, you have an enhanced Tauren Shaman run in. Warstomp's more easily utilized than as a defensive healer. So I took a point away because Warstomp might not be used as much, but if they're being focused or if the Tauren is good and they make sure to use that, however, you might have to get out of position to utilize it. So it's a little bit worse, I'd say. However, I would say the number one choice for PvP healer for Shamans, for the Horde, would be the Orc. The Orc has hardiness, blood fury, and those two are super strong. The Troll really is only going to be contributing berserking, and the Tauren, endurance if they're getting focused, and Warstomp. Alright, moving on to the Priest. So priests are special because this kind of racial decision is more important than other classes. The priest has basically racial. So if you're undead, you're going to get Touch of Weakness and you're going to get Devouring Plague. So Touch of Weakness makes it so the next melee attack on the caster will cause 80 shadow damage and reduce the damage caused by the attacker by 35 for 120 seconds. So that's rank 7. That's max rank. And then they also have Devouring Plague, which actually costs 1145 mana. So this is absolutely a PvP racial. As you can see, kind of a trend with undead and PvP. Devouring Plague costs a lot of mana, and it does some shadow damage over 24 seconds. What's great is that damage heals the caster, so it's pretty strong. For trolls, they've got Shadow Guard. The caster is surrounded by shadows. When a spell, melee, or ranged attack hits the caster, the attacker will be struck for 130 shadow damage. Attackers can only be damaged once every few seconds. This damage causes no threat. 3 charges. Shadow Guard is actually quite strong. I think it's underrated and is definitely something to consider if you want to specialize in defeating, I would say, melee DPS, even though it does apply to casters as well. Okay. Hex of Weakness. Weakens the enemy, reducing damage caused by 35, and reduces the effectiveness of any healing by 20%. Now, this is a racial I actually didn't even know about for quite some time. But Hex of Weakness is very strong, particularly in PvP, by reducing the effectiveness of any healing by 20%. So this is a racial that should not be underestimated and can definitely be used to help secure a kill in PvP. For Blood Elves, they also have Touch of Weakness, and then they have a new racial that, because in TBC Blood Elves were just added, Consume Magic dispels one beneficial magic effect from the caster and gives them 120 to 155 mana. The dispelled effect must be a priest spell, so you're just dispelling basically a buff on yourself. I can only see this being useful in sort of a panic situation where you have no mana. You need to dispel a spell off you. This is a 2-minute cooldown, by the way, so you just use it and then you have a little bit of mana to heal yourself to barely survive. I think that it's kind of a weaker racial compared to the other options. Moving on to PvE DPS, which is the best. So I think for PvE, once again, Troll, I've been saying it pretty much for the whole video, Trolls are really the go-to class for PvE. The Beast Slaying, this is PvE DPS, so the Beast Slaying, the Berserking, I think those two put together makes Troll the number one choice for PvE. For Priest, some of their racials won't really be helpful. You're not going to be getting hit. Undead, they do have the Devouring Plague, but it does cost a lot of mana. But in TBC, you will not really have mana issues as a Shadow Priest. However, they really have no other racials besides Devouring Plague to help. And then for Blood Elves, I thought that their Priest racials were super weak, and really there's nothing to help do damage with their general racial bonuses besides Arcane Torrent for a little bit of mana. For PvE healer, I would say that Troll actually wins again. I think that Berserking is really great, 10% increased cast speed, whereas the other racials from Undead and Blood Elf do not help at all, really. However, when it comes to PvP DPS, I'm going to say, without a doubt, Undead is the way to go. You've got Devouring Plague, you've got Will of the Forsaken. Your kit is perfectly specialized to dominate in PvP. So I think Undead are the number one choice for a priest. However, I do want to say that Shadow Guard and Hex of Weakness should not be discounted. I think that you shouldn't feel like you have to go Undead if you want a PvP. I think you could find a lot of success as a troll in PvP, as a Shadow Priest. However, you do have to keep in mind there's going to be a lot of Warlocks in the Burning Crusade. So that's why I did say Undead is a little bit better, and I think you would be giving yourself a slight disadvantage if you were a troll. Alright. And then for Blood Elves, I would say they're a little bit better than in PvE. Obviously, Arcane Torrent is going to be a little bit more useful. Mana Tap. And you might be getting a little bit closer to people because you might want to Psychic Scream to CC. And so you're already kind of close. And so Arcane Torrent I see being utilized a little bit more than some of the other classes. Not, of course, melee. I think melee would use it probably the most. When it comes to PvP healing, I would still say that Undead is number one. Will of the Forsaken is going to be super helpful. As a healer, you're going to be getting CC'd quite a bit. So I think Will of the Forsaken is just better than Berserking, even though Berserking is very nice. I think Shadow Guard is very nice. Hex of Weakness as well. However, as a healer, you're going to be CC'd all the time. Will of the Forsaken is just absolute gold, and I can't stress how good it is. Cannot stress how good Will of the Forsaken is. And then Blood Elves, kind of middle of the road. They don't really have anything super great as a PvP healer. Arcane Torrent, again, is really their best racial. Okay, moving on to the Paladin. This is an easy one. So the Paladin can only be chosen by Blood Elves. So there's really no race for me to compare it to. I suppose I could compare it to the Alliance. However, this is just a Horde video, but it is worth noting that Horde Paladins are generally considered better than Alliance Paladins because of Seal of Blood. Seal of Blood is a seal, of course, that once you cast, it makes the Paladin's melee attacks deal additional holy damage equal to 35% of normal weapon damage, but the Paladin loses health equal to 10% of the total damage inflicted. Unleashing the seal's energy will judge an enemy, instantly causing 295 to 326 holy damage at the cost of health equal to 33% of damage caused. And what's really cool is if you cast this judgment pretty much around the same time as someone's finishing polymorphing you or fearing you, maybe not fear, polymorph or scatter shot or anything that's broken with damage, you'll actually get taken out of that CC. So this really makes Blood Elf Paladins much stronger than their Alliance counterparts. It's also worth noting that Arcane Torrent and Mana Tap, more so Arcane Torrent, are much more helpful than the human or I would say dwarf racials. Maybe to an extent. I don't want to really explore that too much, but because this is mostly a Horde video, so I'll just stop it right there. But I'll say that Blood Elf Paladins are typically considered better than Alliance Paladins when it comes to damage. Okay, so Druids, again, there is no other race besides Tauren that can be Druid. The only difference between an Alliance and a Horde Druid is how things look, and of course the racials. There's no other race to compare it to, so I guess I'll just kind of give you an overview that your forms are going to look different, and of course your racials are going to be different. I'd say that Tauren have strong racials with War Stomp and Endurance, a little bit of nature resistance as well to help. And that's it. So I really hope that you guys are closer to deciding what class to roll for TBC, whether you want to keep a main, whether you're coming to World of Warcraft, the Burning Crusade Classic, back from retail, or you're rolling a new character. I hope this will definitely help if you're going to roll a new character. I had a blast putting this guide together. I'd love to hear your opinions on it. I think that this is an issue that probably a lot of people have a lot of opinions about. Kind of like my other videos, I really enjoy talking with you guys, discussing things. Maybe I got some stuff wrong. I know there has to be something. You guys are always super great at finding things that maybe I missed or overlooked, or maybe didn't stress enough how good something would be. If you have any predictions of how things may change in the Burning Crusade Classic compared to the initial release, 10 plus years ago, I'd love to hear what you thought. I definitely think that people know Warlocks are great in the Burning Crusade, so we're going to see a lot more Warlocks. I'm going to be making an Alliance one coming up next, so if you want to be notified when that's happening, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so you won't miss it. So that's it. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Bye.